to share this. Good afternoon. We will be getting started in 1 minute. Again, thank you so much for joining us today for the Association for Enterprise Opportunity Blueprint for Innovations webinar series. We're so glad that you all are here. We're just going to give it a few more seconds and then we're going to get started. Thank you all so much for joining us today. You're here with the Association for Enterprise Opportunity, Blueprint for Innovations, our webinar series. We're so excited to have you today. Next slide, please. Just a quick agenda of what we're going to talk about today. We're going to have an introduction of AEO, the Association for Enterprise Opportunity. Learn more about Open for Business program with an overview. Then you're going to hear about the program impact and then learn insights from our amazing panel. And without further ado, I would love to introduce to you our CEO and President, Natalie Madeira-Cofield.
Good afternoon, all. It is a joy to be here with each of you as we kick off the Blueprint for Innovation series presented by the Association for Enterprise Opportunity. As you've heard from Renee Johnson, who's our Senior Director of Region and Industry Councils and the voice of God in the background, we're excited to be here for a thought-provoking conversation that really is a culmination of more than 2 years worth of work with our partner Wells Fargo and a number of national associations and local groups across the country. As many of you all may know, AEO has been passionately dedicated to supporting underserved microbusinesses since our founding in 1991. For more than 3 decades, we've been championing the needs of small business owners, advocating for inclusive policies, and driving innovative solutions to ensure they have the resources, tools, and networks needed to thrive. This Blueprint for Innovation series is a testament to our unwavering commitment to creating frameworks that uncover new opportunities, address significant challenges, and bring together key stakeholders. We believe that by working together, we can explore and implement groundbreaking approaches that will strengthen our entire ecosystem. Through this series, our work and our goal is to offer AEO members the opportunity to discover best practices, gain exposure to proven models and expertise, and directly engage in innovative work that tackles the most pressing issues facing small business owners and the organizations that support them. Today, I'm particularly excited to highlight a project that has been the centerpiece of our innovation portfolio for the last 2 years, the Open for Business initiative. This incredible partnership with Wells Fargo has allowed us to test the integration of AEO's Resili platform on a large scale, providing invaluable support to small businesses across the country. We've set the stage for a compelling conversation around our critical learnings and challenges that have emerged from this initiative, and we'll hear from a few of our project stakeholders shortly about how this particular experience has shaped the future of delivery of effective technical assistance for them. So again, thank you for joining us today. Your presence and participation are critical and crucial to continue to pave the way for a more inclusive and supportive ecosystem for small businesses. I want to also now move into introducing a key partner of ours, Wells Fargo, who's represented by Christopher Johnson. Christopher Johnson is the Product and Innovation Lead for Small Business Growth Philanthropy at Wells Fargo and the Wells Fargo Foundation, one of the largest corporate foundations in the United States of America. Since 2020, the foundation has focused on accelerating economic opportunity and success in underserved communities with strategic initiatives in housing, affordable affordability, financial health, sustainability, and small business growth. Their efforts have been particularly impactful during the COVID-19 pandemic, addressing the urgent needs in our communities. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Christopher Johnson.
Thank you, Natalie. Appreciate it. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Wells Fargo, thank you for the opportunity to participate and support today's event. As Natalie mentioned, my name is Christopher Johnson, and I work for the Wells Fargo Foundation's Small Business Growth Philanthropy team, where I manage a portfolio focused on product and innovation. In that role, we invest philanthropic capital in nonprofit and community partners in support of programs that drive small business success in the communities we serve, primarily capacity building and networking support. A big part of my day-to-day job is thinking about ways that we can help provide efficient and effective technical assistance for small business owners. While access to capital is always a key concern, I'm a firm believer that in order to truly set businesses up for long-term success, you also have to provide them with the tools and knowledge necessary to use that capital in a way that creates growth via increased revenue and ultimately profit. This is sometimes described as the TA-first model. Additionally, I'd say to ignore the necessity of properly preparing entrepreneurs to take on debt or investment capital can risk putting them in a worse position than not having any capital at all. So again, I think this work is incredibly important, and the real question now is how can we make it better? Technical assistance and business support services have been around for decades, but in recent years, and especially since the pandemic, we've seen some really interesting developments around innovation and the ability to serve small businesses both impactfully and at scale. Wells Fargo has been actively investing in these types of new innovative programs over the past 4 years, including through the bank's groundbreaking Open for Business program, which was a $420 million national small business recovery effort that delivered access to capital and technical assistance through grants to more than 200 community organizations nationwide. Open for Business Fund grantees reported reaching more than 203,000 small businesses and empowering them to preserve or create 254,000 jobs. Of those businesses served, 79% were owned by racially or ethnically diverse individuals, 72% identified as being low to moderate income, and 53% were women-owned. Additionally, Open for Business partners have provided small businesses with nearly $842 million in loans, grants, and loan modifications, and most importantly here, more than 817,000 hours of training and technical support. Among its many stories, Open for Business also helped fund the development of AEO's Resilient program and the Business Health Assessment, which are perfect examples of how business support organizations are innovating to drive small business growth. I'm sure everyone is eager to hear about Resilient and all the other fascinating examples of how technical assistance is being refined in the hour ahead, so I'll close by saying thank you once again to AEO for hosting this event and inviting us to participate. Also, that I'm really excited to hear and learn from the conversations ahead. So with that, I'll turn things back over to, I think, Brendan to get the rest of the program going. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Christopher. Wonderful to hear about the larger initiative, and we're excited to share a little bit about how we've contributed with some of our partners today. So before we jump into that, I do want to provide a little bit of context and background on the project itself before we dive into our conversation. So if I can get the next slide. So to help set the stage, there's a quick overview of AEO's innovation model. This will provide context for how we do the work, why we do the work, and sort of lead into the greater conversation. So our approach within the ecosystem has been to work with members, to work with funders, to work with other stakeholders, to really identify challenges in the ecosystem, to work with as a coalition to sort of say, here's an issue that's preventing the flow of capital, the flow of resources to underserved entrepreneurs. Once we find those challenges, we go hunting for solutions. These can be co-designed with different stakeholders. These can be things that we find in the field that are already working, and our role is to sort of amplify them and see where they might work at a greater scale. And again, these usually have to do with working with BSOs to figure out how to get resources quicker, more efficiently, more impactfully to disadvantaged entrepreneurs. What we do is we sort of pull together our stakeholder groups and we start to test to figure out what works, how we can amplify it, how it can be applied and shared elsewhere. And that's sort of the genesis of these Blueprint for Innovation events, is to sort of say, we went through this process, we went through these tests with our partners. Here's what we've learned, and we want to share that with you. So with Open for Business project, which I'll dive into the details of here, Our driving force was to understand how can we leverage tech to help members provide deeper and more impactful TA. And you just heard Chris, I'm sort of echoing what Christopher, echoing what he said. How can we do this, provide support in real time, and then how can we do it at scale? So that's what we're really chasing down here with this project. And the Open for Business work really built on some work AEO had done in the past around testing some tech-enabled platforms that really came about during the COVID pandemic. So our hypothesis then was, as business support organizations were shutting down and going home, and face-to-face support was becoming less reliable, how could we put something online that would allow entrepreneurs to continue to get the learning and the support they needed in that reality? What we learned then that informs the work today is that entrepreneurs do value real-time access to focused learning, and that there is an opportunity to sort of connect the dots between what is being provided online and the trusted guidance in the face-to-face world that business support organizations and AEO members are providing on the ground, really getting back into that relationship-focused piece that we know is so important to this work. So in partnership with Wells Fargo, we sort of set out to try to understand what are the best practices, how can the solution be paired with coaching to support entrepreneurs on the ground. We wanted to kind of think about data collection and try to understand impact by running a much longer test. Let's see what happens when these entrepreneurs engage with this suite of services for longer periods of time, and how that impacts not only the entrepreneur's mindset, but really key business growth metrics. And then third, we really wanted to understand what this thing looks like at scale. So if all of it works, parts of it work, what is required to keep it going? What is required to sort of support it at a larger scale? And then how can we, whether it's AEO or other entities, how do we integrate it in the best way possible to services that entrepreneurs are already seeking out? So overall, our kind of marching orders were to get to work with up to 10 AEO members as our key stakeholders, and recruit 3,000 new users onto the platform to do some of this heavy-duty testing. So a little bit more about, everyone has touched on this Resili platform. So really, what was it? It was kind of designed as a one-stop shop for small and micro businesses. We really designed it to provide really hyper-relevant and personalized learning. We wanted it to be something that was focusing on culturally relevant content, so it made sense for the people who are accessing this as a resource. As of today, it offers over 80 courses, recorded webinars on everything from marketing, HR, finance, whatever you need, you can find it on there. And it provides a business health assessment that really kind of gives a roadmap to the entrepreneur to say, here's what's going well in your business, here's what's not, here's how it connects to kind of a learning plan. Our hypothesis here was that this resource could, when we think about scale and impact, it could operate as a standalone tool for entrepreneurs outside of work with AEO members to sort of access something online, get the roadmap, and go do the work by themselves. We also thought that AEO members would be able to leverage this platform to reach new markets that they hadn't been able to reach before, to simply reach more customers within the same market that they're operating within, or just generally increase efficiency and increase sort of the target of their technical assistance that they're providing. So next slide, please. So the project timeline is really, we worked with our cohort partners for about a 2-year pilot program. We were very intentional about selecting partners that would allow us to pull in entrepreneurs from kind of all over, as much as possible, much of AEO's footprint as possible, so that we could try to understand the needs and sort of user experience of entrepreneurs from all over. We also were able to offer this online learning platform to AEO's own listserv of entrepreneurs who had participated in previous grant programs and other services we provided, which allows us to sort of do comparison around how impactful, what can we learn, what is the feedback from users who are connected to an AEO member and receiving services in that manner, and those who are less connected. So you can kind of see the footprint here. We reached about 24 states, and in the end, we served just over 1,700 entrepreneurs with our suite of services. Next slide, please. Just a tiny bit about the entrepreneur breakdown. So key to the program was that we were really focused on trying to understand the needs and how to best serve Black-owned businesses, although we did offer this opportunity up to entrepreneurs of all walks of life. So no surprise to sort of see the breakdown as it were here. And again, when we think about the cohort makeup and the input from our partners today, we were very intentional about recruiting partners who had connections, who had relationships in communities where it would ostensibly be easier to sort of engage Black-owned businesses to help us test this product. So next slide, please. Those folks that originally jumped on to help us out with this pretty heavy lift were a good mix of CDFIs and even some smaller kind of community-based organizations. You'll see that mix represented today. We had some lenders and some TA only, and we had some folks who are doing both sides of that coin. So just to quickly highlight those folks, we had Corner to Corner, who runs a really in-depth program in Nashville area. We have G-Men, who you'll hear about today. They're operating from Atlanta, but reached the entire state of Georgia. We worked, again, as we always do, it seems like, with Urban League of Philadelphia and Grow Nebraska agency operating out of Kearney, New Jersey. We had Metro Community Development, which is a CDFI operating in the Flint, Michigan area. Tulsa Economic Development Corporation, also CDFI operating out of Tulsa. Lift Fund, who is here today with us, who has a incredible footprint of, Bridget will correct me if I'm wrong, I think 15 states. They might have just added another as we speak, I don't know. And My Sister's Village is also here today, operating out of Charlotte. And then we also had Community Economic Development Fund out of Connecticut. So team members from each of these organizations received some training on the platform elements, how to use this, how to leverage it, how to incorporate it into your existing business model. We did some training around BHA, business health assessment coaching, and how to make sure we're helping maximize the value for that coaching that's happening with the entrepreneurs. And then, of course, these partners helped us do the bulk of the effort on the recruitment to get entrepreneurs onto the platform. So we'll switch gears to the entrepreneur. What do they get out of all of this? We're asking them to come help us test this thing. What is it that they're getting? They are getting access to the business health assessment, which is a 65-question survey that I mentioned earlier, kind of provides a snapshot that says, here are the strengths and weaknesses of your business, ostensibly designed as a roadmap. If you take it and go start to work on these recommendations, we believe that we have you focused on the most important things that are causing issues within your business today. Additionally to that, they would get what is called a My Learning Plan within Resili. So we've got all those 80 courses, we got all those amazing resources. This, based on the analysis of the BHA, says, here's what's most relevant to you. You have access to everything, but start here, and it'll help you learn new skills, new information to apply directly to the most important things in your business. And then the third piece was this business coaching element, where any entrepreneur who had a Resili account, had completed a BHA, could request coaching. And that is, again, the heavy lift that our cohort partners did in that role. The goal here was really to kind of marry those two elements. So even though part of our hypothesis was entrepreneurs could access this, learn something about their business, and be entrepreneurial and go solve the problem, some likely will decide, I need some additional help figuring out how to implement these things, and that's where the coaching came in. So this was kind of a suite of services that we kind of were testing, and when we say the Resili platform, these are the things that came along with it. Next slide, please. So in the cohort world, as we start to test this thing, we engage and asked our cohort partners to engage with us in several activities to help us, make sure we're collecting the right data, to help make sure that cohort partners are navigating challenges that came about. These elements were really kind of broken into the 4 categories you see here. So we kind of assigned some challenge questions that we asked our cohort partners to carry with them into their work. That was our mechanism for collecting sort of best practices and challenges as they integrated these things into their day-to-day work. The second thing is focus groups. This was our first time really sitting down directly with groups of entrepreneurs who had used the platform to understand, what is the feedback on the user experience? How do you feel about the content? What's the value of the BHA itself? And that has given us a bunch of information about the preferences of those folks and how we can kind of reposition things, which you'll hear about in our conversation. And then finally, we did some impact surveys to help us sort of quantify the impact when people are accessing this. What does it look like on the back end? So we'll get into that as well. And then finally, cohort management, just kind of meeting with these groups on a regular basis to try to understand the more narrative of what we're learning as we went through this pilot. So when we get into program impact, you can see here that certainly we did start to see, we did surveys at 6 months and 12 months, and we're able to see indicators that access to the suite of service did have positive impact on several key areas within the business. So two I'll call out is 90% are saying that the program, meaning accessing that suite of services, has helped me make better decisions in my business. And then sort of the job growth numbers there. So was I able to create or maintain jobs? You heard Chris speak about that. Christopher, sorry, speak about that at the outset here as an important metric. Outside of the impact, I do want to talk a little bit about the critical learning that we took away that's really informing not just, hey, we did this Open for Business program, and here's what comes next for Resili, but really is informing AEO's model moving forward. So I will share the highlights here before we jump into the conversation. What we really took away were that entrepreneurs who engaged in coaching with cohort partners tended to get the most value out of the Resili platform. So we did, like I said, we did have those two audiences, and we really did see the application of learning that happened was much more valued, much more real for the entrepreneurs who are working in tandem with these cohort partners. Entrepreneurs found value in the Resili platform, but over and over again, they indicated that they would have preferred more structure, more accountability, and even some credentialing in some cases that would have made it more valuable. It would have been a higher priority for them to complete some of the learning within the platform and would have driven more engagement, which was sort of an interesting twist on our original hypothesis of 24/7 hour access to key learning right in the moment that you need it. And then entrepreneurs reported that online learning helps address immediate fixes for, hey, there's a fire in my business, I need to fix it now. But they really prefer that layered on face-to-face support with a trusted partner, like someone from LiftFund or GMen, to help with the more strategically focused decision-making within the business. And then the last two, BHA demonstrated a clear value for our partners and other business service organizations as a standalone tool. So we have started to think about BHA being designed as an entry point into Resili. Now we're thinking about it as really a strong assessment tool that helps entrepreneurs, yes, but primarily business service organizations understand how to best design impactful interventions to address the greatest needs. And then related directly to that, the BHA data has the ability to help business service organizations understand the greater entrepreneur need in whatever market they're serving, and then start to be able to assess their own organizational ability to meet those needs as they come up, and identify some gaps in that area. So those are some of the things that we're exploring more long-term over at AEO as a result of this work. So as we shift gears into our panel, I want to, this discussion will be around best practices in delivering effective TA. So I want to introduce kind of three main themes that we pulled from the Open for Business experience. We've asked panelists to use their experience in this program to help us explore these themes and share, the learning and insight side but also the challenges that they've identified in trying to see what worked within their existing model. So those themes are really this, very simply, this idea of integrating tech into your delivery model. So we have a very specific tech tool that we were testing, but we've opened this conversation up to a larger sort of definition of tech. Secondly is balancing operational efficiency with relationship building. We sort of want to, again, explore that tug of war of, yes, we want to move faster and quicker and serve more, but also we understand that it's important that we spend the time to understand what's going on with the entrepreneur and individualize the service. And then finally, leading with value for the entrepreneur. So this is, you'll hear me talk a little bit later about putting on that lens of the entrepreneur and how that influences our decisions around program model and client interaction. So those are the themes we're going to be discussing as we jump into the conversation. Before we do that, I want to introduce the members of our esteemed panel who were in this for the long haul with AEO, which means they spent a lot of time in Zoom rooms with me, which was always a fun time for me. So I appreciate their additional contributions today. We have with us today Nikki Arsenal, who is a program manager with GMEN, Georgia Micro Enterprise Network. Lynn Leary, who is the founder and board chair at My Sister's Village, and Bridget Steele, VP of Business Support at Lift Fund. So thank you all for being here. Wonderful to see you all. I want to start just kind of with some intros. So I'd love if you could each introduce yourself and kind of frame it in tell us a little bit about your organization's approach or philosophy to providing TA, right? Like, so give us a little bit of background on that. So I'll start with you, Nikki.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Brendan, and thank you for having us here today. My name is Nikki Arsenault, and I'm a program manager at the Georgia Micro Enterprise Network. As Brendan mentioned, we are located in Atlanta. We have offices at the beautiful Russell Innovation Center for Entrepreneurs, and we serve as a resource to support and fund micro businesses, not only in Georgia, but throughout the Southeast. So we really started providing the bulk of our technical assistance back just before the pandemic started, and also as an answer to the challenges that came up for micro businesses and small businesses throughout the pandemic. We have provided many years before that technical assistance in an online or virtual capacity, but that was really what was the catalyst for us to really bring that to the forefront and offer that as the bulk of our services during that time. And what we found was that was a very needed resource for entrepreneurs, not only during and throughout the pandemic, but afterwards. We're seeing that the effects of that are still very much in play, and anyone who serves micro enterprises or small businesses knows that very deeply. So we are continuing to offer training and technical assistance. We do that through our 7 active programs right now. We offer TA in finance and accounting, marketing, HR, legal, human resources. We also recently, about 1.5 years ago, started to provide funding opportunities through our GMEN Flex Loan Fund. So we're getting ready to launch another round for our Flex Loan Fund later this month. So we really look at technical assistance as a way to bolster small businesses and entrepreneurs and to help them be ready to not only grow their business and strengthen their business, but as a way to provide financial capacity to provide opportunities for additional capital readiness, because we know businesses are always in need of that extra financial support. And so we're really grateful for the opportunity to participate in the BHA program. We learned a lot, and it was wonderful to be a part of this group and to learn from everyone, and also to provide those extra resources for our entrepreneurs throughout the course of the project.
Awesome. Thank you, Nikki. Let's hear from Lynn.
Thank you, Brandon. Thanks again for having us here. Really do appreciate it. My name's Lynn Leary. I am with My Sister's Village, a nonprofit that is here in Charlotte, North Carolina. My Sister's Village started as an organization to help young women from disadvantaged backgrounds become economically self-sufficient as they grew into adulthood. It was never really our intent to be an entrepreneurial service organization. It just happened that way. We found that so many of our participants were either engaged in small micro businesses or they expressed an interest in it, but that the group that we served, they didn't have family history or anything in business. So many of them didn't have a clue as to how to go about running their business. So we started out, our technical assistance started out by providing, it was a 6-week program where we would bring in community experts who would teach in things, setting up your business, marketing, things of that nature. And we had pretty good participation with that. But one of the things I started finding was that so many of our young women thought everything had to be perfect before they could really be an entrepreneur. You know, I've got to do this, Miss Lynn, I got to do that. You know, I'm not ready to do this. So that was a big part of the reason why I got involved with AEO once I found out what was going on, because it allowed us to give an offering we didn't have, which was using the Learning the Resilient platform, the courses that were going to come online at that particular time, and to be able to work with our particular participants to let them know everything's not perfect, that, you know, here are some resources that you can use to help you get to where you want to be. And no entrepreneur ever has everything just perfect. So it's the Resili, the BHA, all of that has just been fantastic. And it's been great. It's been a learning for me and my group. Also, we have changed the way we do quite a few things, which we'll talk about a little bit more as a result of having as a result of having this access. So again, we've been great, really appreciated being a part of this process, and we've learned a lot ourselves.
Great. And last, but certainly not least, let's hear from Bridget and Lift Fund.
Thank you. And Brendan and Christopher, thank you very much for this opportunity for our community. The whole program has been truly phenomenal and actually a wake-up call. But for Lift Fund, we've been in this arena as far as being a CDFI, a Community Development Financial Institution, for over 30 years, providing access to capital to small businesses. Over the last 30 years, we've actually helped to put $1 billion on the street to our small business owners. And this is with an average loan size of $25,000. And the reason why I mentioned that is for the reason of the technical assistance aspect. It's one thing to give a person $1, but as our illustrious founder, Janie Beretta, has always said, how do you stretch that $1? And that's where technical assistance comes in. And what the BHA was able to provide to us was just a single document to help a business understand where they are, first and foremost, because with each stage of business, there are certain things that you need. So it helped them to visibly see where they were, what the need was, but most important, the elements of a business plan. We talk about business plans all the time. When it comes to lending, when you get a loan, you have to have a business plan. But most people do not know what a business plan is. And what was so phenomenal about the business health assessment is it lays it out in every 5 areas with the strengths and also recommendations. And where we came in, our program managers across our 15-state footprint, we're heavy in the state of Texas, but with our program managers, what they were able to do was to provide that coaching and continue on with the coaching, building that relationship. So as far as the 2 years are concerned, it was, as I said, a wake-up call. Why? Because we're a lender. That's our first, our first stay of business is being a micro lender, an SBA approved lender. But guess what? When COVID hit, everybody stopped lending and it went to grants. And then grants, how do you sustain that? So thank God for Wells Fargo. Thank God for AEO for identifying this was a need for our small businesses. So again, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. I love that TA helps folks stretch the dollar. I think that's something we should sort of frame somewhere. That's good. So I want to jump into the first theme. So again, it's integration of technology. So one of the biggest things we were testing through this program was how to best use technology to increase access to resources that we know entrepreneurs need. We wanted to understand what does that need to look like for the entrepreneur, so that they can access, relevant learning in real time, and what is the impact that they could have, that could have on their business. So I'd love for each of you, I'll start with Nikki here. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about your specific experience leveraging Resili, or other technologies. I know at least two of you have other technologies at play. Anything that kind of supports your work, and what's the impact, positive and negative, that you've seen it have on entrepreneur engagement?
Absolutely. We primarily used the BHA and Resili as a tool, well, the BHA specifically as an intake tool for our programs and courses. So what we found was that a lot of people who come to us for technical assistance, if given the opportunity to identify a particular area where, if we were to say, what is your greatest pain point? They might select an area that was different than what the BHA told us was the biggest pain point. So I think for us, that was the most surprising and helpful or advantageous aspect about the BHA, because it gave us that third-party resource to say, okay, what is really truly, when you look at the numbers, when you look at the facts and the areas of the business plan that Bridget had just mentioned, where do you really need the most help? We can talk about those other areas where you need help, or maybe refer you to another resource later on down the road, but really let's talk about that biggest pain point as was it identified by the BHA. And oftentimes that was in the area of finances or financial management. So it was very helpful for us. The test case that I used was the program that I manage, which is the Rights Project, our program for providing resources to those returning from incarceration. And so it worked really well, where we had people coming out of a class, a 10-week readiness class. We asked them to take the BHA, and then we funneled them into our technical assistance program, which at the time was NAVGA. So for us to get that opportunity to have them complete the BHA, and then we sat down for our one-on-one coaching. And so it was myself, the program leader for NAVGA, and then the client. And to have that 1 hour meeting, it was just such a rich conversation every time, just to really have three brains on one problem. Really, it brought so many things to light. And then to have the BHA, and also following that, the Resili tools to say, okay, you can be taking these Resili courses in tandem with the technical assistance that you are provided one-on-one with our TA provider. So it really provided such a rich opportunity for like multi-level technical assistance for our clients. And people were really, it was so wonderful to see people come out of those meetings almost like lit up, like, there's so much positive energy and hope. And I think that's what a lot of businesses are needing these days, is that encouragement, that hope. We're all in a rush. We all have so much to do. And very rarely do we sit down, and it could be virtual too. It doesn't have to be in person. We were fortunate that a lot of times we could do those meetings in person, but to have that opportunity for in-person encouragement and to have ideas tossed around, I think it really encouraged a lot of people and provided that positive uplift that I think kind of ends up at the bottom of the to-do list. We have all these other things going on, when really like enforcing that or reinforcing the businesses with that positive, those positive reinforcement aspects really made a huge difference for us. I think the only negative would be that the 2 years for the program really flew by. And so I think once we really got used to the tool and understanding its full capacity, we were all of a sudden in the last quarter of the funding opportunities. So I would, we've talked about how we would implement tools like the BHA moving forward. We've talked about the importance of having the same tool like that across the board for all of our programs, using that at the beginning and the end of our courses and our programs, so that we really have an accurate measurement of where are people, when they come into the program, and how are people measuring up and feeling when they leave our program, so that we are able to see what level of success that we've had as program administrators and organizations, so that we know where we are at and what improvements we need to make.
It's amazing. What really landed with me there is that idea of like that gut check with what the entrepreneur thinks they're trying to solve. Many times they're right on the money, right? But we already know I'm trying to solve the thing that's right in front of me. I'm putting the fire out. And I've been in that seat talking to somebody for an hour about whatever this problem is, and then you say, man, I really hope that's the thing that, and integrating some piece of assessment or something that is able to say, yeah, let's gut check that. This is really an issue, or maybe it's underlying that we should really be spending that 1 hour that we have on something deeper or something totally different that might solve that problem that is right in front of you. So I love that. Thank you, Nikki. Let's hear from Lynn.
Integrating, especially the training courses, was wonderful for us. It was fabulous. They were right on time. Like I said earlier, we had started out, we would do a 6-week course where people would come in and we would have community members, subject matter experts would come in and they'd lead a session on things. And as I said, most of our participants were people who were contemplating starting a business, or they might have been doing something, but they never really saw it as the business that it was. So that's the group that we were working with. So we would have the subject matter experts come in, and sometimes it was too much for the group that we were working with. It was too much information. Sometimes they felt might have even been a little too high level for them. So when we got access to the 24-hour training and the courses that were there, that allowed us to do these bite-sized programs. It changed an awful lot for us. So we would take that course and, we'd offer these 1-hour sessions that people could tune into, and everybody would either watch it beforehand if they had signed up for Resili, but we'd play it also during the session. And then you would have these folks who were still pretty unsteady in the entrepreneur work sit there and talk about, okay, what are the issues that you're facing? Did you find an answer, assistance in that video? What more do you need to know? And then we give them time with a subject matter expert after the fact. They do some coaching off with that particular person. So getting a hold of that particular service, that was a game changer for us. And we definitely saw engagement go up with that, because like I said, it allowed us to do what we were trying to do in much more manageable bite sizes. The business health assessment was a little harder for us because, again, it was geared more toward those who had been in business, a little more mature than the group that I was having. So it did take a minute for us to pivot and say, how do we make use of this? And what we did, we started having them do it. And although we explained that a lot of this you're going to think doesn't apply to you now, but it will in the future. And we started using that to help do business plans. And we have what we called, it's the 1-page business plan, where really it's just setting up your goals and things of that nature. And we were able to leverage the BHA to doing that. So everyone would take the BHA if they were working on a business plan. And it was eye-opening for so many of our participants, because they would talk about, these are things I hadn't thought about. So that was, like I said, it took us a minute to pivot to that one, but it became such an integral part, and it is an integral part now of what we do when we're working with a group. You're going to do the BHA. You might not think it all applies to you, but trust us, it really does. So the integration was actually, for the most part, relatively easy. Like I said, the training is invaluable. Yeah, it is great. And it goes back to something you said earlier, Brendan. We started out with, okay, everybody watch this and then we'll talk about it. That wasn't getting us the same engagement that, hey, we're going to watch it together and then we're going to talk about it. If you watched it before, that's great, bring your questions, but having somebody there with them that they can ask questions of, we saw a lot more engagement and appreciation of that tool at that time.
For sure. I think that I don't think I mentioned that specifically, but the other element that we heard a lot was, I want to be able to digest this learning, and then I want to do some work, and I want to go to the expert to double check my work. And in that world, they saw both, yeah, if it's the teacher or the expert, but also my peers that are going through the same thing. What did they learn? What can I learn from them, and how does that apply to me? Was another, I think that might have come directly from your focus group, but we heard that a lot going through the process as well. So I
Yeah,
appreciate
the
that.
peer learning was great.
Bridget, let's hear from you.
Yes, the integration was actually, it was on time for us. And as I mentioned, being a micro lender, we already had a full database of clients that were in need of funds, but needed to help understand how they needed the funds. So what the BHA did was it allowed our program managers to specifically center in on where the client needed the help. And what I mean by that is this. When we started with the BHA, the first round, when we did the first round with the double coaching and everything, what we did is we partnered with the community partner that actually did business plans. In addition to, we went to our portfolio of clients that we have, and we offered the BHA because, as I mentioned, it was right at COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, okay, I'm shut down, what do I do? And I'm going to compare that to what we're going through right now in real life time, what we're going through with Beryl. I think that's what her name was.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I don't know why it had to be a she. But anyway, going through with Beryl right now, because right now, Houston, that portion is shut down. It's still shut down for business.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one thing that I was going through our portfolio of clients and our BHA. You're talking about integration. We didn't have this in 2019, but going through yesterday and today, because like I said, our businesses are shut down. We're a micro lender. We need our businesses to function, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But going through it, I noticed that a lot of them have an online platform, which is one of the areas that the BHA identified as how are you marketing? So what we've done is we wanted to be very intentional. So integrating the BHA allowed us to be very intentional, meaning just like Lynn said, it's true. A lot of people do not understand, surprisingly, what a business plan is. You think, oh, well, no, surprisingly, most of your business owners are, well, now it's transitioning to where they are individuals, the baby boomers that are retiring. But prior to that, it was the skilled labor workforce. What does that mean? They worked, right? So with that, there wasn't a lot of education that was given, but with the BHA, it allowed us to step back and say, okay, these are the components of it. This is what we need to do. You're not doing any type of marketing. This is something we may need to focus on, particularly when you're in the southern states like we are. We're heavy in all the southern states. We know that the 6 months out of the year, we have hurricane season. There's going to be some type of impact. So because of we were able to integrate the BHA and identify it all the way up from the coast when we were in our El Paso area, all the way over to even, the southern parts of Louisiana and in Texas, we were able to see exactly what's needed for that area, identified in the business health assessment, but more importantly, it took it away from us for having to tell and sell to where they owned it because they saw it when they answered that 65-question business health assessment.
Sure. No, that's great. And that speaks to, again, the sort of learning on our end was we position the BHA as, hey, we want the entrepreneur to be able to have that snapshot to take away. But if you do enough of those snapshots, you can have a full understanding of here are the persistent issues our entrepreneurs are bringing to the table. And then when we go back as an organization and say, how well prepared are we to deal with, not everybody's going to have to deal with businesses shutting down for hurricanes, but we are going to have to understand our market in new and different ways, and collecting that data can help us do that. So that's amazing. Before we shift to the next theme, I will just very quickly, when you are there any do's or don'ts that you would offer to organizations who might be very grassroots and thinking like, hey, we could really scale up or go really efficient if we integrate any level of technology? Any words of wisdom, pro or con, that you would share very quickly?
If I can share, I would say meet them where they are and be understanding of that. Pay attention to the client. As the organization, pay attention, know your portfolio, know your community. Because like Lynn said, there are going to be individuals that are intimidated when you say 65 questions.
Or
But the
log
key
on to
thing
this
is just-
platform or, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just know, walk them through it. That's what I would say.
Mhm.
I would add, be willing to stretch your client.
Mm.
Also, as I said, initially when I did the BHA, that type of thing, I was like, ooh, I don't see how this is going to fit here. And even when I started telling people to do it, they were very hesitant. Imposter syndrome is a real thing, but
Mhm.
telling them, yes, here's what you can get from this. You can learn something from this. So their willingness to stretch them, but it started with my willingness to stretch them. So I
Sure.
think that's critical. Just be willing to stretch your client. They're hungry. They're hungry for the knowledge. They're hungry for the learning, and anything that you can give them that's going to help them be successful.
Right.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with Lynn and Bridget. I would also add that it's really important, is what we see a lot with our clients. There's a very wide range of technology skills. And so just allotting that extra time to walk through the process with people who don't have the strongest technology skills. And sometimes that does mean in-person meetings and going back and forth. So I think just allotting enough time to make sure that you're able to serve those clients who struggle with and are intimidated by technology. I think we're exposed to it. We use it so much in our day-to-day that we forget that there are varying levels of capacity there.
Yep. Excellent. Wonderful. So let's in the interest of time here, let's shift to theme number 2. So at a certain point in the project work, I think we started to recognize the potential value of the BHA and its ability to provide value to different levels for each of you and the other partners in the organization. So we began to explore that idea. I talked about the tug of war that a lot of business support organizations often feel. How do we get more efficient, and then how do we balance that relationship piece? So constantly from funders or partners or whatever, serve more businesses, track more hours, get more loans out the door. And yes, we can do that, and we can put processes in place to make that happen. But often we're doing that at the risk of kind of herding cattle through the gates and losing sight of that relationship piece. And I think if there's really one core thing we understood about this, we got entrepreneurs to do the things we were asking them to do because you all knew the entrepreneurs. You had the relationships with them. They knew who G-Men was. They knew who Lift Fund was. They knew who My Sister's Village was. They had that kind of trust in place for you and your team and the tools that you use. So what I'd like to kind of jump into is that feedback that we got from entrepreneurs is they need that accountability. They have concerns about information sharing, we heard, and they want to trust you. So can you share some of the learning around trust building and how your team have been intentional about building that kind of trust element into your interactions with entrepreneurs? This is more of a general question, just kind of a best practice question, not necessarily related to the BHA. And let's start with let's hear from Bridget first on this one.
Thank you, Brandon. Actually, what we've done, it is our foundation to the rest of our programs. It's one thing that we do know about our small businesses. Continued education is critical because our economy keeps changing. We're in AI now. How do you utilize AI in your business? So with the BHA, what we've done is we use that as a platform. And I'm going to give a real quick example. So we use that as a platform. If it identified that you needed, your strength was that you keep track of your information, but your weakness where you could improve was if you had a system in place, an accounting system. We immediately enroll them in our 4-week QuickBooks class. To where we actually have a subject matter expert that actually we pay them to set up their QuickBooks for them, as well as help them understand what that profit and loss statement and that balance sheet means. So that's how we bridge and we stretch the relationship with our BHA participants. And I will say this, it also, you talked about the herding. You're right. I think we're real good at the ask, which is, we need you to do this so we can help you. But what we found are the ones that were serious are the ones that took the next step. Okay, we have a 4-week class. I'm going to enroll you in this class. It's going to be free for you. It's contracting. We need to strengthen your relationship. We have a 4-week class on a digital platform. We're going to enroll you in it. That's going to be a free class for you. What we found is the individuals, the businesses that continued on with the continued learning, they're succeeding as far as better. We're tracking that.
Mm-hmm.
And the ones that are looking for a quick fix, they might not be ready right now.
Right.
But they can pick up that BHA in another year or so and then contact one of us on this call. So for us, it was a matter of bridging and building that relationship beyond the BHA. The BHA was just our foundation, and
Sure.
it still is our foundation.
Right. Right. How about Nikki or Lynn? I'll let you choose.
I'll jump in real quick. I agree with so much of what Bridget said, and you know, the BHA was a wonderful tool, but at the end of the day, I think it's really important to have that one-on-one rapport with the client. So whether that's an in-person meeting or a Zoom check-in, for us, that really made all of the difference in the client being willing to take the BHA. I think with the number of questions on the BHA, that posed a lot of feelings of intimidation for our clients. So just that quick check-in to understand that, you know, this is, even if you can't fill it all in, that's okay. Like there's a way to, you know, meet people where they're at so that they understand that this is to help you in the long run. And also, like Bridget said, where, you know, the people who really are ready to go through the course or the class and to take full advantage of the technical assistance opportunity, generally, we don't have any issues with people filling out the needed, you know, BHA or really any requests for information, because they understand if they're at that point where they really do need that assistance and they see the value in it.
Great. So what about the flip? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Lynn. I jumped in front of you.
Just real quick, I was going to say that trust factor is critical, and having that one-to-one kind of relationship. That's what got me to get people to take the BHA. If you remember, my folks, again, they're contemplating, or I'll just never forget, I had the young lady, she's been selling bonnets. She started during COVID and doing really well. And she was like, "Oh, Miss Lynn, I don't really have a business." Like, if you're selling them, yes, you do. So it's like, well, I don't know any of this stuff. Talking with her and telling, here, this is the why. I think, as Bridget said, we're always good with the ask, but sometimes explaining the why and having developed that relationship is what got a lot of them to say, okay, go ahead. I'll go ahead and take it. And yeah, they finally saw, I guess you were right. I could use this to help me put together my business plan. The relationships are critical. We wouldn't have gotten the engagement we got if we just said, hey, go do this and watch the courses and hope it all works out for you.
Yeah. And it goes back to, I think it was Nikki, someone who talked about kind of that gut check piece, right? It creates that safe space to sort of say, if I position whatever the assessment is, whatever it is, if I position that in the right way and I get them to engage in it and understand the value, then it sort of opens up, it frames that conversation. Lynn, you and I talked a lot about that, about using what falls out of that assessment to sort of create that safe space and frame the conversation. We don't need to talk about this right now, but this is an issue. We've got to spend the time here. And that sort of, I can't remember how you the actual words you use, but naturally pushes you into that sort of trusted guide space that a lot of these entrepreneurs are looking for as they come through. So thank you, excuse me, for sharing those. Really quickly on the flip side, I would love to hear about, particularly because we have kind of different scales of organizations here. If you can talk about, we do have this sort of need to think about how do we do more? How do we be more? So what are some of the things that you've seen work to directly address capacity issues or increase the capacity of your staff that doesn't kind of diminish that relationship piece?
take that. I would say again, for us, I'll go back to the courses. Before, we had to get a community member to come in to teach a course, to spend some time doing that. And we have a great community, but it wasn't always possible to get someone when we needed. Being able to use those courses and then do the peer-to-peer kind of learning allowed us to touch more people.
Yeah.
Right? So we found a way to make that work for us. And then we started using, it became a benefit that if you went through this and this is an area where you're struggling, then we can set you up with a community member who's a subject matter expert there. So it took a lot of pressure off of us with always trying to find someone to come in and do the courses. So we learned how to do things a little different. That just made things a little easier for
Right.
us.
And I know we talked about this the other day. Remind me, you are all volunteer run
Yes.
organization too, right? Which I think is important to think about that. That really is, if we're serving a lot of folks and it requires somebody to volunteer time, you're volunteering your time. You could put something out there that is low quality just to say we did something, but I like that approach to make sure we're getting some consistent value, which will kind of lead into our next theme.
Yes.
Anyone else have anything to share in terms of things that work to increase that capacity?
Yeah, this is something that we've really been talking about almost for a decade now at our organization, because we are a smaller organization. We realized very quickly that a lot of the technical assistance, training, learning opportunities need to be self-paced for the client and more affordable for us, because the cost of technical assistance is so high. And our answer to that has been to develop our own platforms for online learning. We started about 10 years ago now, developing an online learning platform called Micro Enterprise Development Organization University, which is quite a mouthful, so we call it MDOU. So we've been honing and developing MDOU, and over the course of the past year and even up to now, have really been focused on updating MDOU as a learning platform to provide our clients the access to those on-demand trainings, low to no cost training opportunities, and it enables us to provide or record the training once, and then it's available, and it creates less of a burden on us to provide the technical assistance or that learning opportunity for the client. We're also in partnership now with Adovo, which is another online learning platform, to provide our curriculum to within facilities within jails and prisons, to get our content to learners who can't come to our office and don't have access to the internet. So we've been working for many years to try to create those solutions so that we can reach our clients where they're at, and also to lessen the burden of the expense on us as an organization. So it's something that we're always trying to, it's difficult. It's a trial and error thing, just like this was a pilot program. And we've learned a lot through participating in this program about how we want to tailor our own trainings and resources from seeing courses on Resili, because really the Resili courses were very high quality. Our clients really enjoyed them. And so understanding that, what works and what doesn't work, we've pulled a lot of that from our own experience with using Resili and have our clients use Resili.
Right. Great. Wonderful.
From the Lit Fund standpoint, as I mentioned, we've been in business over 30 years, and our mainstay is lending. And we, as I mentioned earlier, over $1 billion on the street in small business loans, and a default rate less than 3%. That's major. And the reason why is relationship. So when it comes to the BHA, and as far as us, we do leverage it, as I mentioned. We do leverage it so we can make sure our capacity is in place. When we first started out with the program, I don't know if you remember, Brenda, but when we first started out, it was just 2 in our business resource hub department. Now we have, because of partnerships, because we know the value of technical assistance, we now have a team of actually 9 throughout our 15-state footprint. And what we do is we leverage community partnerships. It's one of those things it's the saying that we say, we want to get you ready to be ready and stay ready. And the way that we do that, as I mentioned, one is the BHA. Number two is leveraging it against the other programs we have. We've been very, very blessed to be able to get other programs to marry the programs. And that's what we do. We marry, just like Nikki talked about. I think it's critical for a CDFI to marry your programs to have success and track that. I know, Brandon, you and I talk about that, but it's critical that we track it because, as Nikki said, yes, technical assistance is high, but the cost of a failed business is a lot higher. So it's important that we have the technical assistance in place and we track to show how much time is involved with providing that technical assistance so we can maintain the capacity.
Right. I think another, excuse me, key element that I believe this came from Jaron and Chevy with Corner to Corner is just from a TA standpoint, knowing where is our sweet spot. They have a very specific target for all their entrepreneurs to get them to 6 figures. And by the time they're getting there, they're like, we are no longer your partner. We have to start figuring out how to pass you off, right? So I think that's a critical element too of being very clear about what do we do really well, what do we not, and how do we partner with folks who can actually do that and maintain that sort of connection to the client. So that's huge. Thank you. Let's shift to there was a quick question here, I think. Someone is wondering about the name of the platform that G-Men used in prison. If you can revisit that, Nikki.
Sure, that's Edovo, EDOVO.
Okay, wonderful. All right, so jumping to our third theme here, we want to explore the idea of leading with value for the entrepreneur. So when I say that, I am pondering how can we as business support organizations reassess our programmatic approach or re-examine the entrepreneur's life cycle with the organization solely with the lens of adding value to the entrepreneur. Very related to this sort of efficiency kind of relationship piece. But again, we heard, this is not verbatim, but so many times the entrepreneur is saying, like, if I can't identify value for me, I don't want to do it, right? If I sniff any reason why I shouldn't trust what you're asking me to do, I'm not going to do it, right? If I can see this is going to help me develop, this is going to address the problem that I've identified in my business, then yes, I'm on board. I see the value. I want to do it. I'll ask you, or have asked you, to think about, putting on that entrepreneur lens and think about the journey you ask your entrepreneurs, your clients to go through, whether it's presented as part of this pilot program or kind of your general model. What challenges come to mind that the entrepreneur might go, whoa, not for me. Don't understand the value there. What immediate challenges when you think about your program cycle pop up for you? Let's start with Nikki again.
Well, I don't know if this is exactly what you're asking, but I think for us, a lot of our clients feel very isolated. And so the need for clients to be in a room, whether it's virtual or in an actual in-person room, I think that for us has been very valuable in encouraging people following a process through to the end, whether it's creating a business plan, going through a full 10 to 12-week course. But I think it's really important to have people around you, fellow entrepreneurs, training leaders, or people who work for organizations like ours, to bounce ideas off of, to get that real-time feedback. And that was one of the things you and I had talked about, Brendan, that our wish for BHA was to have that real-time, or Resili, to have that real-time feedback from experts so people could actively ask questions. And because that was really the only thing I felt like was missing from Resili, is as you're going through this course, you're going through it, on your own, to have that opportunity to engage and have the opportunity to pose those questions when issues came up. And so I think that's one thing that is always going to encourage people to push through from the beginning to the end, is seeing that there are other people around them going through the same process, and also having a sounding board or someone to ask questions of as you go through, especially like when Lynn said the thing about people feeling like they need to be perfect. I think that's a very real issue. A lot of us, especially women, don't want to do something unless we can perceive it to be perfect. And that's something that I think we can kind of chip away at that by being around other people, seeing other people go through the same process, have the same goal in mind, whether if you're going through a class, for example. So I think having those other people around you is really important, whether it's in person or virtually, to help mitigate those issues that you were talking about, the challenges.
Right. Yeah, and we heard that in focus groups as well, right? I want to my learning will land better when I can compare it to the learning of the person going through the same experience with me. So if we can create those spaces, then I think we do encourage more of that to kind of sink in. So that's wonderful. Lynn or Bridget, anything to add there?
One of the areas that I just listening to the program managers is they would ask whenever they had their one-on-one consultation with the client, they'd have to complete the BHA, send them the BHA. We take about an hour to review the BHA and then set up the one-on-one appointment. And the one thing that came out of it that was consistent across the board with our program managers was the question of the financials. Okay, I understand it now. How do I do that? How do I do it? Because the videos, they give you so much, but the thing was, can it be hands-on? If you do this, like you said, real time, if you do this, I put these numbers in. Is it going to give me an answer? And what we found with that is we have to couple it with things that are not available through the Resili platform. But keep the Resili platform as the foundation, but couple it with, okay, you need to go to our AI class. Because the one thing that we found out why individuals do not have an online platform is they have challenge with content. They don't know how to speak what they need. And with the business owner, just about every day, the need could be different. So how to use AI, how to integrate that with the Resili platform. That's one thing that I think that would be really good to consider, from that standpoint. And that's just from feedback from the clients that really did go through all the programs we recommended.
Yeah, for sure.
The ones that we recommended. But in addition to that, I will close with this. As I've said before, and I've stressed this to you a lot, Brendan, for those of us, the partnerships that you have, it's important that we all stay in business. And to track what we do, the Wells Fargo Foundation, they need to understand the full impact of the time that volunteers put in, our subject matter experts. Our subject matter experts, we pay them way less than what they get paid on their individual time, but they volunteer that time. And I think so long as we can track these results of the completing the BHA, if they have to step away and come back to complete the BHA. Resili, if they watch a video and they have to stop to implement what they see in the video and then come back, tracking that time is critical because all of that time adds to the success of a business.
Right. For sure. Wonderful. So as we kind of close things out here, I would love to hear, is there, when we think broadly about your experience, excuse me, in delivering technical assistance, delivering training, is there one thing that we haven't really discussed today that you would want this audience to understand or consider as they go back to their day-to-day? Who's brave? Bridget looks brave.
I do want to say this, and this may be a selfish thing because I believe in education. I believe in that. And I think as partners, we owe it to the business community to provide that because they're working hard every day. So I say this because AEO is research. You know, AEO knows through the policies and everything, you know what's going on in our communities.
Mhm.
And I think we could find a way to be better at, even if it's 1 point or 2 points on a monthly basis, saying, hey, here's a 5-minute section on what's going on in your area. You know, and so we can let the business people know so they can be proactive instead of reactive. And I say
Okay.
that, and I say that for AEO particularly, don't kick me off. But I say, because I know you for research.
Mhm.
That's who I know you for. And so the community needs to know you for that as well. And that 5-minute segment, I think would be really important.
Right. Same question to Nikki and Lynn. Anything we haven't discussed today?
And I just want like a little mic. I want to have a little mic for a little mic drop for the last 2 things that Bridget said, because, you know, at the end of the day, the most important thing is that we're able to keep these businesses in business. And the only thing I would add to what Bridget said is just there's always a need for funding in this area, and that what is a relatively small investment from a funder equates to more businesses staying in business and creating opportunities for longevity that I don't think we've even been able to accurately measure in terms of their greatness yet. So I think just the importance of continuing to track those numbers, to share success stories, so that funders can see that this is such a worthy investment of resources, because it really does keep more people in businesses, and also keeps people employed, allows them to employ other people, and really strengthens the backbone of employment in this country. And so, you know, I think we can really make a case for that moving forward if we all work together.
Yeah, I have to agree, just the continued education piece is key. I mean, if there wasn't a need for it, none of us would be in business here. I wouldn't have expanded my program to do this. You know, people, when they're self-motivated, they're hungry to learn, being able to continue to do that. Peer-to-peer learning is critical. I mean, you know, Bridget, God bless you that you can pay your community folks. Like mine are all volunteer. You know, I mean, but you know, being able to continue to provide the programming. I love Nikki's idea of being able to get some real-time feedback if I'm doing a course and I've got questions. As I said, we kind of sort of do that ourselves, but that goes to my volunteers who are willing to say, hey, I'm willing to give somebody 30 minutes of my time if they want. If they've gone through this, they still have questions, I'm willing to give them some time with that. So, you know, being able to continue to do that, to get real-time feedback, I think that would definitely be a win.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your wonderful contributions today. I have seen some questions about whether or not we can make this BHA available. So we can figure out a way to do that, as we are sort of doubling down on that testing and how we envision the future of BHA. So that will be a possibility for folks on this call for sure. I do just want to take this opportunity to just thank you, thank each of you for joining us today and for all the hard work that you put into making Open for Business such a great program. It does sadden me that we are coming to a close to not be able to work as closely with each of you, but I appreciate you taking the time to share your expertise and your experience here today. And everybody who joined, we appreciate you coming to hang out with us today and learn a little bit about what we had to share. We will make the recording available. I will figure out a way to get BHA shareable. And we look forward to having you at the next Blueprint event. Thanks so much for joining us today.